to Avtar's Daily Devotions. So glad to have you here with us. Today we shall be taking a look at what does it mean to be responsible towards our neighbors. And for that, we shall take a look at our scripture from Luke chapter 10, verses 36 to 37. It says, which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. See, the parable of the Good Samaritan is probably one of the most famous quotes or teachings of Jesus. To be known as a Good Samaritan essentially means, it means somebody who goes out of their way to help the poor and the needy. But to the Jews of the day who were hearing the story, this was downright offensive, incomprehensible, and downright foolish to some degree. Because for the Jews, the Samaritans were unclean people. They believed the Samaritans hated them, and so in turn they hated the Samaritans, and they kept their distance from these so-called unclean people, these unclean or disgusting people. To put into context, think about modern day racism or communalism or religious fundamentalism. Basically, it means you replace the word Samaritan with any other group of people, say Christian, Hindu, Muslim, etc. And here, Jesus doesn't really seem to care about the distinctions that we make as people. For Jesus, if you were to ask him, what are you to do? Well, we are to go and help our neighbor. Who is our neighbor? For Jesus, the person who is in need that you can help right now would qualify as one. So help whoever is in need is essentially the main idea of this parable. Anyone who is in need is the object of mercy and justice. Antonio Gonzalez here writes in his book, God's Reign and the End of Empires. He says, to be a neighbor is not simply providing an occasional charitable help, nor demanding that problems be solved by political power, but oneself establishing a permanent fraternal relationship with the needy person. See, here the widow, the foreigner, the fatherless, the sick, the vulnerable are especially deserving of God's justice and mercy. They depend on the service of the church in order to survive. The poor and the beaten man in our story today was completely at the mercy of others for his own survival. And see, ultimately, Jesus was broken and bruised, stripped of his clothes and left by the wayside. There was no Good Samaritan who came to his rescue. He paid the price, and having paid the price, he became the true and ultimate Good Samaritan for us. And now when we are attending to the hurting and the poor and the needy, it is not us but Jesus who lives within us, who's helping us be the Good Samaritans. And so in response to Jesus who lives within us, when we think about justice and mercy, we must attend to the needs of anyone or who is in need for whatever reason that they cannot provide for themselves. I know that's a lot to take in, but as you think about this, I want you to reflect on this question, which is, who is your neighbor? Who is the person in need around you you can help immediately? And what will it take for you to go and help? Let's pray. Lord, help me to be aware of the commandment to love you and to love our neighbor as ourselves. Help me to be merciful to my neighbor even when it's inconvenient, and even when there are a whole lot of reasons not to engage with the situation. Help me to remember that the Good Samaritan and Jesus' message is simply to go and do likewise. Father, we ask of this in your most precious name.